So once and always, for stories never really are, so they never really aren't, and always they shall ever be, and once upon a time they shall be too. So once upon a time, and always, forever, here and ever after, there were two volcanoes. And these two volcanoes were right in the middle of the great, glistening, beautiful sea. And the two volcanoes rose up, and one rose high and steep, and one rose low and flat, and they formed an island. And on top of the taller volcano's head was kind of a cloud that hung a little bit like a crown. And then in and around the volcano's many slopes there were lagoons, glistening turquoise pools of paradise with ropes and vines and monkeys swinging and parakeets hawking and butterflies and dragonflies, and they all shimmered and shined, and well, it was quite a prosperous place indeed. And then you came down the slopes and you came to the white sandy beaches, and the white sand beach stretched all the way around the volcano. And down near the beach, or maybe on the beach, and on the steeper side of the island, on the steep volcano side, there was a little hut. And in this hut lived a man. And the man, well, he spent most of his time out collecting fruit or doing things like that and keeping busy. And when he got a little bored, he managed to fashion himself a knife, and he would sit there and he would whittle his time away carving shapes and figures from the wood that he collected around the island. And he shaved and he carved and he collected a collection of figures. There were some turtles that he'd seen kind of loping around and some dragonflies, but then there came a time that he just let his hand flow, and he just let come out and create whatever wanted to come out, and all kinds of figures started to come out. But from these figures there was one especial one that he loved so dearly. It was a figure that was most like him, only a bit different. For it was like him, only a bit more beautiful, a bit more slender, and with long hair. But unlike him, she had a fish's tail from the waist. The man had never seen anything like it, but he rather loved it. And so the man was out one day, he was collecting some fruit from up high in the volcano, and from the great tall trees that grew with the great big mangoes and great big bananas, and he found a piece of fruit on the floor. And he looked and he was a bit sceptical, because he knew that bits of fruit on the floor, they didn't make you feel so good if they'd been there too long. And he started to feel a bit sick if he ate them, and then he started to feel a bit sad. Sad man's fruits, he called them. But then he looked up and he saw a great big thundercloud coming in. And he thought, oh, I better get back. And so without a thought, he picked up the fruit, put it in his basket and ran on home. And he got there just in time, for the thunder clapped and the lightning struck and rains came down. The heavens' vaults opened, cascading and waterfall from the great heights. And it rained and it rained and it rained. And the man lay there. Rain was not common, but it was not completely uncommon either. And so the man had learnt to pass the time by listening to the gentle pitter-patter of the raindrops on his roof and the subtle harmonies that they made, the great orchestra of Mama Agua. And so he lay there and he lay there, and then he realised that it was getting a bit dark. And the dark was not a place that the man really knew. He didn't like the dark. He didn't like it when the warm thing in the sky left. He didn't even know the dark. He'd never been out in the dark. When he saw the sun going down, he got into his hut and he got into bed. And he could tell it was getting dark, so he thought, I better eat my food. And so he pulled the mango up and he ate it, and not long after he began to feel rather sad. This kind of shard of glass came up in his tummy, and he felt pain. and he felt lonely. And this shard clenched until he could do nothing else but grab his most beautiful prized figure, the beautiful slender form with the fish's tail, and he clutched it to his tummy. And then he cried. And he cried and he cried and he cried. He cried till he matched the very storm for wetness. And the great shard in his tummy split and melted and flowed down. He cried and he cried until he cried himself to sleep. When he awoke, the sun was back in the sky, and the man went out feeling a little better. But as he came out, he saw something washed up on the beach. There was some creature of some kind caught in the storm and had been washed ashore. So he went over to it, and he looked, and he saw that the figure was like no figure he'd seen on the island before. It was like him, only more slender. Like him, only more beautiful. And the man looked down, and the figure turned around, and she was rather like his little figure, his little mermaid. But she didn't have a fish's tail, but tail, in fact, legs like his, only more slender. And the figure turned around and looked up. And the man looked down. And he said, "Hello." And she said, "Hi." And the man said, "Are you hungry?" And the woman said, "Yes. Yes, I suppose I am." And the man said, "Would you like some fruit?" And the woman said, "What's fruit?" And the man said, "Don't you have fruit where you've come from?" And she said, "I don't know." And he said, "Where do you come from?" And she said, "I don't know." And then they looked at each other and started laughing. What did it matter that she didn't know where she had come from? She was here now. And so was he. And so he ran off up to some high tree somewhere and gathered some fruits and came back, and they had a most delicious lunch on the beach. And from that day forward, things went really well with the man and the woman. It was almost as if they were made to be together. And the man started climbing a little bit higher to reach the juicier honey, and the woman every day became more gentle and more lovely and more loving. And they went around the island each day, and one day they came across one of those beautiful turquoise pools of paradise. And the man was a bit scared because, like the darkness, he didn't go into the water. He'd never been into the sea or swam in one of these lagoons. There was just something that wasn't quite right. But with the woman there, it didn't feel so bad, and so he jumped in, and they had an amazing swim. And they were there in the beautiful turquoise lagoon pool of paradise with the dragons flying around and shimmering dragonflies. And then the woman began to feel rather sad. A deep panging, a loneliness, a loss. There was something was calling her. And she just couldn't place it, and anything the man did, it just couldn't warm her up. And they went back to the hut, and the man felt terrible, and the woman felt worse, and they were all a bit confused and a bit sad. And with night coming in, the man didn't know what to do, and he got into bed feeling useless. Feeling quite sorry for himself, in fact. And he went to sleep, and the woman looked out upon the moon, and she gazed upon it, and it didn't seem so scary. She couldn't quite place why it so worried him. She walked over, and she saw that figure that he loved so much, and that looked so much like something she thought she once knew. And with that, she stole out from the hut and she looked back towards the man, and she knew this was what she had to do. She left. When the man awoke, he couldn't find her anywhere. He was distraught, so upset, so ashamed that he hadn't been able to help her, that he just turned over and lay in his bed, and all because I'm scared of the night. Coward. Just a coward. And he looked around the island and he searched, but he couldn't find her anywhere. And eventually night came, and he just couldn't face it, and he got back in his bed, and just in self-pity and self-loathing, he lay there. And then he heard a song coming through the window, and it sang, and it said, la 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 la, lay la lay, la 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 la, lay la lay, la 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 la, lay la lay, la lay. It went on, and it sang, and the man was completely captivated. And though he was so scared of the night, the song, it just melted anything else away. And he got up from his bed and he walked out, and he saw the great milky lantern hanging in the sky. He'd never known the moon before, never known the magic of the stars. And he heard the song, and it called, and it was calling from the sea, and he looked out over the inky black ocean, and there on a rock was a figure most like his figurine. And then he looked again, and he saw it was the woman, and she saw him, and she called out, she said, I have remembered. This is my home. And the man looked out and his heart broke. But he looked out again. He looked back at the island and he thought, what is it worth living? What's this island worth? What is a day, a minute worth without? And so he sucked it up. And he ran splashing into the water, though he could not really swim. And he splashed and he splashed and he splashed. And there was a quiet. And the ripples stopped moving, and the mermaid looked out, her heart in her throat. And in a second she dove off her rock and down through the water, down to where the bubbles had stopped. And there, something started to move. Their bubbles started to move again, and they whipped around and around and around, and the woman looked round, and there was the man. Only now he had a tail of a fish too. And she said, so this is your home too? He said, my home is wherever you are. From that day forward, they lived by the kingdom of the sea and the kingdom of the air, one by day, one by night. From that day forward, a little crown too appeared on the smaller volcano, befitting it, rather like a crown.